to meeting number 18 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates, of course known four corners of the world as the mighty OGO. Today we welcome our Treasury Board Minister and his officials. So pursuant to Standing Order 108.3c, the committee is undertaking a study of the SUP-Bs for the fiscal year ending on March 31st, 2026. In addition, we have departmental results 2024-25 for the Treasury Board. You'll be making an opening statement, Minister?
Yes.
Great. The floor is yours for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Merci beaucoup, Chair. Bonjour tout le monde. I'm delighted to be here with my officials to discuss 2025-2026 Supplementary Estimates B, which propose $10.8 billion in voted authorities. The investment listed in these estimates will support key priorities for Canadians, like dental care, Indigenous sport, and defense. First, the government is proposing $1.6 billion for the Department of Health to support the Canadian Dental Care Plan. The plan is making dental care more accessible and affordable for more than 5.5 million lower-income Canadians. These estimates also provide important funding for Indigenous priorities, including $154.6 million for elementary and secondary education, and $705.9 million for emergency management in First Nation communities. This funding will support response and recovery activities for natural disasters, loss for essential services, and health crises in First Nation communities. Mr. Chair, the government is also rebuilding, rearming, and reinvesting in Canadian Armed Forces. Supplementary estimates B present an additional $1.1 billion in planned spending for the Department of National Defense, which includes $294.5 million for various multi-year defense investments, and $215.1 million for the River-class destroyer to replace aging vessels and enhance Canada's naval abilities. Funding in these estimates bring the total authorities for the Department of National Defense up to $46.7 billion for the 2025-26 fiscal year, which is an increase of roughly $12.2 billion from the previous years. Mr. Chair, my department, the Treasury Board Secretariat, is seeking $926.8 million in funding. This proposed spending would be provided to departments and agencies to cover recently signed collective agreements with public servants. It also would fund public service insurance plans and programs, which have seen recent increases in coverage costs and claims. Mr. Chair, I also want to briefly highlight our ongoing work to strengthen oversight, transparency, and accountability through key reporting instruments such as the Public Account and Departmental Results Report. The most recent public accounts provide Canadians with a clear and comprehensive pictures of how public funds were managed over the last fiscal year, while the Departmental Results reports show how departments performed against their planned objectives. Excuse me. Together, these reports help ensure Parliament and Canadians can hold the government to account for both spending and results. While we're making investments to support priority areas, we're also focused on finding savings. Through the comprehensive expenditure review, we will be reducing operational spending by $13 billion annually by 2028-29. These savings are drawn from efficiencies as well as initiatives and activities that are no longer needed, effective, or aligned with the federal mandate. We're also returning the public service to the more sustainable size. This is a challenging but responsible action. We greatly value the public service, Mr. Chair, and will act with compassion and transparency. One of the ways the government will support this transition is through voluntary early retirement incentives. This incentive will help reduce the size of the workforce through attrition and voluntary departures to the greatest extent possible. In closing, Mr. Chair, we're investing more in what matters most for Canadians and growing our economy. This is a transformational time for the government to seize the moment. This is a time to reimagine how we work, how we can improve services to Canadians, and how we can build for the future, and how we can build Canada strong. I look forward to answering your question. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Minister. Before we start with Mr. Kelly, I do want to note today is the 25th anniversary of working here with our amazing clerk, Marc-Olivier Girard, known as the Mighty Mog. So congratulations. Thank you for 25 years of service. And in celebration, we have arranged a lovely selection of cookies and coffee at the back, chipped in by the taxpayer. So anyways, congratulations. Thank you very much. We will now turn things over to Mr. Kelly for 6 minutes. Mr. Kelly, welcome back to OGO. The floor is yours.
Thank you. It's good to be back here after an absence of quite a number of years. But Minister, you said that you're going to reduce and that there's a plan for reduction of full-time equivalents. Public service right now, or at least September 2025, was down to 346,000, heading for a goal of 330,000. Much of the reduction that you were to make has already occurred. You've got a few more to go with volunteer, and you said mostly through voluntary reductions. So why have you refused to provide the parliamentary budget officer, and through him parliamentarians, information to help us understand the personnel reductions that you have planned?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question, Pat. It is a really important question. A comprehensive expenditure review is aligned with our government commitment with Canadians to spend less and invest more, and to balance our government operational budget in the next 3 years. That's exactly what we're focusing on. Your question towards the PBO's letter, my team will be working to respond to his letter as soon as possible. But the timing was not reasonable when the letter came in, because we haven't finalized those details, and it would be unfair as an employer for us as a government to give those information to PBO before communicating with public service employees. So we'll be providing a response to PBO.
Well, wait a minute, Mr. Minister. On October 30th, you told this committee that you would release the information of the comprehensive spending review to the PBO, and you have failed to do so.
I think it's we said it that we will provide as soon as possible. It was the details were not finalized at the moment, and it would have been unfair.
Was the cabinet briefed? Was the cabinet briefed on the reductions?
May I respond to your question,
it sounded like you're
sir,
repeating your response.
No,
to the
I'm
first
not repeating.
question.
I'm giving you that reason that it would not have
Rappel au
been
règlement, Monsieur le
reasonable to
Président.
provide those information to
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Interrupt, Madame.
Les interprètes font un travail extraordinaire.
The interpreters are doing extraordinary work, but when we don't give them time to complete before the other person takes over, we can't ask them to do a miracle. I would like to receive the complete interpretation in French, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. Go ahead, Mr. Kelly. But Minister, he did ask a very straightforward question. I think the committee, parliamentarians, and Canadians deserve a straightforward answer. Mr. Kelly, I've restarted the clock. You have 3 minutes and 20 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Was cabinet not briefed on the reductions?
I would say that the details were not finalized, and we would not be able to provide the information to PBO until we communicated with public service employees. We're dealing with as public service employees' livelihood. We thank them for their services, And I think it would have been unreasonable, unfair to have those information to someone else prior to communicating with public service employees. So that's a reasonable, responsible way of doing.
No, some would say it's an unlawful response. The Parliament of Canada Act allows the Parliamentary Budget Officer access to that information. You are denying information to the Parliamentary Budget Officer that is clearly laid out in the Parliament of Canada Act.
No, sir, we are not. We will be providing information to public PBO, and I can ask my deputy to fill you in further on that, please.
We'll have time for the deputy in the next hour. On what hour, what date? Will you do it by the end of today?
As soon as possible, we will provide.
Okay, that sounds like
information.
what you might have said on October 30th. So, would be today or tomorrow then that we'll have.
What I can commit, we will provide as soon as possible.
That's I'd like a date, time.
I don't have a date. I will provide as soon as possible.
Does the information not exist?
We have to communicate with the public service employees. They're the impacted party here, and this is responsible. This would be unreasonable for as an employer to communicate to someone else before communicating with the public service employees.
No,
we're dealing with the livelihood of the public service, and I think it's fair that we communicate, finalize those details, and communicate with them before
Minister,
we release it to PBO.
You are asking parliamentarians to vote on these estimates while denying parliamentarians the information that they are entitled to in order to assess the estimates that you have tabled. It is not acceptable to you. You are not free under the Parliament of Canada Act to pick and choose what you think is a fair or correct order of things. So I'll ask you again, will you commit by tomorrow's Friday, by tomorrow afternoon, will you comply with the lawful request for information by the Parliamentary Budget Officer, yes or no?
Mr. Kelly, let's not play politics on the lives of the public service employees. Within my legal authority, we have presented in the Parliament main estimates, and you have all the information there, but you're asking about PBO date. Within legal authorities, as soon as possible, we will be able to provide.
I think it is very telling that you think parliamentarians are playing politics when they ask for information to which they are entitled in order to study and assess estimates that have to be voted on behalf of taxpayers. You don't have the choice to decide whether or not you release the information.
Chair, those information is already. Chair, it would not be fair that if I don't have a time to respond to his question, that would not be fair.
Minister, time is up. Mr. Gasparo is up next. Perhaps he will allow you some time, but the time is up. Mr. Gasparo, if you wish. Otherwise, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, would you like to respond? You can take up some of my time, or do you just want me to?
I would say that we're dealing with here public service employees, and I'd like to thank them for their service to Canadians. This is their livelihood. We're finding savings. We're balancing the operational budget. We're finding saving and investing in priorities where matter most to Canadians, like housing, infrastructure, defense. PBO sent that letter, and my team will be providing a response to that letter. But it was just 5 working days. The time was given. We have not finalized details at the time, and it would have been totally unresponsible and unreasonable for us to provide those information to PBO prior to providing into the impacted or affected parties, which is public service employees. So that is my response. I just wanted to pass it on. And main estimates, that is before the Parliament. So all the details are there. So that was, I just wanted to.
So you referenced public service and you referenced investments. So in terms of public service and investments, I'd like to talk about the RCMP. And as you know, many Canadians and most parliamentarians believe the RCMP does vital service within our national security apparatus. Some of the investments our government is providing to the RCMP includes an increase of almost $18 million in operating capital, $41 million in grants and contributions, $70 million related to health benefits, disability benefits. How will these funds improve policing effectiveness, officer welfare, and public safety?
First of all, let me express my sincere appreciation and dedication for the public service employees across the country and RCMP and CBSA officers. Their work, they put their lives in danger in protecting Canadians and serving, delivering services to Canadians. In a comprehensive expenditure review, we had different targets for defense, and like it's 2% of that, and those savings were finding and reinvesting into priorities like trainings and providing tools to our law enforcement agencies, and by hiring more 1,000 CBSA officers, RCMP officers. So we're investing in our armed forces to secure our borders, to secure our communities, and these are necessary investment, and we need to make it in order to provide the tools to our law enforcement agencies to deliver services to Canadians.
Drilling down a little bit on the investment piece, the Regional Economic Growth through Innovation Program. Obviously, multiple agencies are receiving funding under this program. How does the government coordinate these investments to maximize economic growth and innovation across different regions throughout the country?
For that, I can pass it on to my deputy to give you more technical details on that, please.
Certainly. Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. The key departments involved here are the Regional Economic Development Agencies. You've got the Atlantic Canada Opportunity Agency. You've got one in the West Coast Pacific. You've got SEDQ in Quebec, et cetera. Those agencies play a critical role working together in terms of delivering the government's agenda to either support industries that are in need or to drive innovation. So you'll see a lot of collaboration amongst those organizations as well as the Department of Industry, just to make sure that we get maximum delivery and collaboration. So it's those organizations that are the key ones.
Great. How is TPS working to align some of our new investments with Canada's innovation and productivity goals so that those investments deliver maximum impact for businesses and communities across the country?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the role of the Treasury Board Secretary in this area, I would point to a couple of key policies. They're the policies around results. And so when there's a new program launched, there will be results defined or targets defined that actually come as part of the package to actually receive funding, which then Parliament votes on. And then those results and measures are used to evaluate effectiveness. They're very important in terms of assessing ongoing effectiveness, even though some of these things take years to demonstrate fruition. And the other tool that we help departments with is the evaluation tool. So when you have a new program every 5 years or so, there's an evaluation done on the results itself to make sure it's getting the results intended. And you will see all of that rolled up in departmental results reports that are tabled in Parliament every year around this time.
Which time, Chair?
Negative 5 seconds. Madame Gaudreau, please.
Merci d'être là.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I have several questions, not enough time, so I wouldn't want to really interrupt you. However, let's come back to the topic of investment, because We've heard lots of references to what is happening in Quebec, and we will really separate investment. Unless I'm mistaken, I put the question to the former Minister of Finance of Quebec, Mr. Letao. And investment is capital investment. It's equipment, infrastructure that will enable us produce. If I understand well, it's not loans, tax credits, it's something that we own. So I'd like to understand what is happening in Quebec is two separate items. And I put the question to the parliamentary budget officer, and he said, what in all the money that the money will be allocating, and it's about 4%. And if we look at the figures, investments, it's as if everything will go there, tax credits, loans. What belongs to the government? Is this false data or information that the parliamentary budget officer gave us? He talked of 4%. What do you think? Thank you very much.
I thank you for the important question. What I can tell you here, supplementary estimate, it's where government is seeking 10.8 billion to support a range of priorities, including dental care, equipment and training for armed forces, First Nation emergency management, and in main estimates, over 66% those spendings are transfers to promises and territories.
C'est des prestations de services.
These are services being delivered. Let's tell people the truth. If this is a service being provided, it's money we have decided to grant or to loan, so it belongs to those people. Even when you give them care, you need to tell people the truth. In my opinion, the foundation is that the budget and the parliamentary budget officer told us all this, and from what I see, it cannot work, it cannot be implemented. I'm shocked hearing Mr. Letao saying that he doesn't agree with the information given to us by the parliamentary budget officer. We are talking about cutting 16,000 people. Those 16,000 people, they are calling my office. They are concerned. They don't have any answers. So we're trying to understand some of the figures. We don't have any details. Could you demonstrate proof of the contrary? We were told that this cannot be implemented, and the parliamentary budget officer has said this is not possible. So could you convince me? And there are many people watching us. Please convince me.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you for the question. There's many questions in one question that you talk about budget 2025, then you talk about CER and PBO. I don't know if we'll have enough time, but I'll try to explain as much as I can. So first, the budget 2025 is a transformational budget, but it lays out a clear plan to build a stronger, more resilient Canada with targeted investment that support growth, security, and affordability. It proposes generational investment in housing, which is $25 billion, and infrastructure is $115 billion. Defense and security is at $30 billion, and productivity and competitiveness is $110 billion. This will allow us to meet the moment and enable $1 trillion in total investment in Canada over the next 5 years. Budget 2025 also proposes over $25 billion to support for workers and businesses. Budget 2025 also introduces long-term saving through a comprehensive expenditure review with reduction beginning in 2026-2027 to ensure fiscal sustainability. And then when we come to comprehensive expenditure review, that review will achieve $9 billion in 2026-27, $10 billion in 27-28, and $13 billion from 2028 to 29 and ongoing. And this will include reduction of obviously FTEs, and there's agreement with union bargaining agreement there that is in place, and that would be followed and that would be respected, and we'll do it in a way that it has minimum impact on involuntary.
Thank you, Minister. That is our time. We'll go to Mr. Patzer for 5, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Minister, over the last 10 years or so, there's been close to $9.9 billion returned to Treasury Board from Department of National Defense. I am just wondering if those funds are being made available again to the Canadian Armed Forces, or if those funds have been put back into consolidated revenue.
As my understanding, that's additional funding for Canadian Armed Forces. But if it's from last 10 years, you have a question related to, I'm going to ask my deputy to. You don't want to know the details?
The short answer is they're available, Mr. Chair, for the department. Those funds continue.
You can table them with this committee after if you have that information. I appreciate it if you could just, if you have them, table them after the committee. I have another question I'd like to ask the minister for. You also said, Minister, earlier that there was $1.1 billion in new spending that was in these estimates here. Is that $1.1 billion as part of that total figure, the $815 million that was returned 2024, 2025?
Can you? This is a technical question. I'm gonna ask my deputy to respond.
Well, you said it was no, it's not. You said it was new spending.
You don't want. Look, I have.
You said it was new spending. Is it new spending or?
Certain you want to get the right information, or you just want to don't want to get an answer. So.
Well, you're the minister of the Treasury Board. You are the stopgap on where money goes up.
We are here, all committee. You have a question. You want to get an answer. So I want to give you a proper answer. So let's clear that. But you have a question in mind. So just 30 seconds, please.
So.
Have the information. If you could table it with this committee afterwards, I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you very much. There's the estimates request $476 million for the Future Fighter Jet Capability Program. Is that earmarked for F-35s, or is that just a general number?
I think it's those are the questions to Minister of Defense and Finance Minister. I think it's. I can ask my colleague, or we can get in touch with them.
Minister, it's in the estimates, and it's from the Treasury Board too. So.
35.
Okay,
so it's
F-35.
You want to get the right information. I think it's it's F-35, but specifics Minister of Defense would be able to answer those.
Okay, is that
so F-35? I just told you.
But is it to upgrade the facilities? Is it as part of the purchase of the F-35? Like what's it for?
It is to. Then again, it's a technical question. You're asking. I think it will be fair. I'm going to ask my deputy to.
The point here is, when you get a request for money, do you personally review it, or do you just get a piece of paper, stamp it, and away it goes?
Team, those submissions, the team work with it, and deputy he's a secretary of the Treasury Board Secretariat, so we both do it. So if it's he's giving that response, it's not that one person does that job. It's a team works on that. So
you read the requests as they come across your desk?
Of course I read.
You read all the requests as they come across your desk?
I try as much as I can.
Okay.
I think I can pretty much absorb a lot.
Okay. Good.
Maybe if I could, Mr. Chair.
You know what? In the second hour, you might have a chance. Yeah.
So you don't
I
want to
might-
know the answer then?
I want you.
You don't wanna
I want to
know the
know that you
answer.
know the answer.
So
You're the
I
minister.
know the answer, but it's a technical. But then let's
Excuse me.
let's use this time wisely.
Minister, I'm going to interrupt here and I've stopped the clock. It is the member's time. I will allow him to ask the questions and we'll go on. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Do you have a request on your desk to send more taxpayers' money to Canada Post?
I am not aware of that. I will check with my department and let you know.
Okay, because these estimates have over $1 billion. I know that was the previous request, but there's reports now suggesting that they are going through that money a lot faster than they were planning to. So I'm just curious, do you have another request from them or not?
I don't have that on my table.
Okay, it's a repayable loan. Are you going to, is the taxpayer going to get that money back from Canada Post? Do you know?
What I can say, I don't have that request on my table at the moment. I'm not aware.
Are you aware of the terms of the deal that Canada Post got to receive the $1 billion?
We can provide that details to a committee.
Are you aware of it, though? The question is, are you aware of it?
That it was given prior to me becoming president of the Treasury Board. So I think I was not as the president at the Treasury Board when that was given.
Thanks. That's our time. We'll go to Ms. Rochefort, please, for 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll go in a different line of questioning from that of my colleagues, Mr. Minister, and maybe to start with one that's close to my heart to some extent. People, I guess, in my writing want to know that the spending review won't hurt bilingual services. In my writing, about a third of the population in my writing are Francophones, and in Canada there's about 11 million French-speaking Canadians that are Francophones. And so can you explain how the Treasury Board is making sure that English and French services stay strong and that our official language obligations are fully respected as we move forward with these estimates?
Thank you for the question, my colleague. Chair, I want to assure my colleague that nothing in the spending review will diminish our commitment to bilingual services. Canada's official languages obligations are fully protected through clear rules and regulations, many of them established by Treasury Board Secretariat to ensure Canadians can always receive services in the official languages of their choices. We have also strengthened language requirements for managers in bilingual regions so that federal employees can work in the official language they are most comfortable with. These measures reinforce our commitment to strong, accessible English and French services across the country.
Well, thank you very much. That's very important. I appreciate that information. Maybe just to move forward with this week, I had the opportunity to meet with the Public Service Alliance of Canada to discuss issues, I guess, surrounding public service workers and services in rural Canada more specifically. And I was happy to hear you state that there's an agreement in place as you move forward with the plans for attrition that has been agreed upon with the union. And so basically, I guess I'm interested in understanding with some of the investments in these estimates, including funding for dental care, emergency management, and compensation for federal public servants that all play a critical role in sustaining reliable services across rural and northern regions in Canada and in my writing. And so basically, I want to make sure that as we move forward, that if there's any cuts at a public service level, that it won't impact negatively the service in rural Canada. And I was wondering if you might be able to comment on that.
Thank you for the question. The government is committed to making sure that the public service employees are treated fairly and with compassion and empathy. There is collective agreement in place, not on this, especially on this particular thing, but overall between union and employer. So there are tools into it to deal with these sort of situations, and we will be dealing with accordingly. And there was a minimum impact. We'll try to have that involuntary workforce adjustment.
Thank you. That's it for me for the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll go to Madame Gaudreau, please, for 2.5.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Why are we here? We asked the PBO to explain the new measures, and he says, I did not receive any explanations. They're on their way. Now it's been sent out to the universe, so we'll get an answer someday. Now we're talking about budget projections. I understand that there's general information. We've talked about 16,000 jobs, and then we're hearing that the questions will be put to another minister. Mr. Chair, I do not have enough time, but seriously, I may just send out all my questions and expect them to give me answers in a week or so. Taxpayers want answers. Now, 3 times now, I've heard about collective agreements, and I'm concerned about what the PBO and the OAG have stated. When I look at the figures, there's a 7.8% salary increase. Why is it increasing? I understand that there's collective agreements and there's a margin of increase. And we are talking about cutting 16,000 jobs. I don't understand. Why the salary increase?
Thank you for the question. As I said, that workforce adjustment this government came with a commitment with the Canadians to spend less and invest more, and to build the strongest economy in the G7, and to balance our operational budget in 3 years. And that's exactly we are doing. And in terms of PBO's situation, I have explained that already. I can restate that we will be providing a response to PBO.
Puis la réponse, vu que mon temps achève, c'est que
Considering that my time is running out, the OAG says that contracts should be stopped. If there's an increase in the salaries, essentially she's right, because you're reducing staff, public servants who are highly qualified. I'm trying to go fast, who have lots of skills, and now you're talking about contracts. We're going to recruit many people with contracts. I'll come back later.
Have to get back to us in writing or perhaps later in the session. We'll now go to Mrs. Jansen, please, for 5.
Thank you so much. Minister, this is how I understand it. One of your core responsibilities is oversight of government spending, like especially when there's numbers that reach into the billions. Earlier this week, we learned that the Minister of Industry and her deputy minister did not review the Stellantis agreement in its entirety, a deal publicly reported to be around $15 billion. So naturally, we're wondering if anyone actually reviewed the whole thing. So my question to you would be, and I realize you weren't there, but perhaps your colleagues can help. Did the Treasury Board see the full Stellantis contract before approving $15 billion of spending?
Thank you for the question. As my colleague, you said that I was not there, and I can ask if you allow.
Please, yeah. I'd like it's a yes or no if you saw the full contract.
Normally, the way this would work is the departments responsible, they actually review the contracts. They would get authorities from the Treasury Board to go ahead and transact deals, but it would not involve a page-by-page contract review.
Okay, so you didn't see the whole thing either. Okay, so that's an interesting. So the Minister of Industry didn't see it, the Deputy Minister didn't see the whole thing, and the Treasury Board didn't see the whole thing, and you're approving billions. Minister, respectfully, how does a contract of this magnitude clear your department without anyone reviewing it?
As Deputy just stated, that there are delegated authorities to ministers. So there's certain authorities are delegated to ministers. So if those agreement or contracts submission, they are under those authorities, they can go ahead and get into contracts.
Sorry, Mr. I'm just have a question now for Mr. Ali. I'm just wondering, are you concerned that if the industry minister and the deputy minister went to Treasury Board for approval of $15 billion without reviewing the full agreement? Sorry, are you concerned about that? Is my question. Does that seem like a good process?
I think we actually have a robust process and procedure and rules in place, and everyone is adhered to follow those rules. And if the authorities are delegated to ministers, they are bound by those rules and regulations and policies. And I expect everyone follows those rules. And if someone does not follow, there are rules to deal with it.
So, but if I understand it, you are the person who has to worry about, or whoever was at the time, you have to be concerned about spending oversight. It's your job to make sure that they've actually fulfilled those obligations, right? That they, the spending is justified, the risks are understood, the department has done its homework, taxpayers aren't getting taken for a ride. Is there something we can do to ensure that someone is held accountable for not actually fulfilling those things, if we're not even checking?
There are rules in place for oversight, and there are guidelines. There are authorities delegated to ministers, and if anyone goes beyond that or not follow those guidelines and policies, I think there is a mechanism to deal with it. They should be held accountable.
Do you know, Minister, if anybody has read the entire contract?
That contract was not in my, I was not a president.
Mr. Matthews or Mr. Trudel, no? Has anyone read the entire contract?
There would be people both from the Justice Department and in the department ISET itself that would have reviewed. I will take back to see if there was anyone within TBS that reviewed the entire contract, but the bulk of the work would have been Justice and the line department ISET.
Okay. So my biggest concern, honestly, is if we rubber stamp a bad deal because we don't know who's read what, aren't you supposed to be the ones that say, okay, hold on, does this actually make sense? Isn't that what the Treasury Board is about? Your name is on the bottom of the check.
Thank you. I agree with you that we we're accountable to Canadians. We need to be transparent, and we take every precaution.
You believe that there is a mechanism to...
Our time. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Ms. Khalid, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Minister and to colleagues for attending today to answer these questions on Supplementary Estimates B. I'll start with talking a little bit about the public service, if that's okay. I know that it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride with public servants between COVID to now, in terms of working from home and then being asked to come back to work, and then between full-time, part-time, half-time. So my question is specifically about the early retirement options that public servants have been asking about, and what that might mean for job security across the public service. So I'd like you to maybe speak on how the government is approaching this in a way that protects our workforce, and it reassures employees of the future as well, and it ensures that any workforce adjustments minimize involuntary departures as well. We want to protect the public service.
Thank you, my colleague, for the very important question. We're going through a challenging time. This is a new norm of global economic shift, what we're dealing with. And then we have made the commitment with the Canadians in this mandate that we will invest, we will spend less and invest more and balance our operational budget in next 3 years, and that's exactly what we're doing. What we're trying to do is trying to find savings and investing in the priorities that matter most to Canadian, which is housing, infrastructure, and Canadian armed forces, which means there's more opportunities on those areas, Canadian armed forces, housing. By doing so, we're also focusing on Buy Canada approach as well. And to me, this is a very challenging and difficult issue that we're dealing with the public service livelihood. And this should not be, to me, this is not a political issue. This is a real issue that impact is on those public service employees, not only on them, their families. So we do it in a way that we find other tools and options that minimum impact will have as an involuntary workforce adjustment. So there is early retirement option. There is incentives, early retirement incentive, and there is attrition. So that is the mechanism we have, and we haven't finalized the details yet. But still, team is working on it, and I can ask Bill if he can shed a light on this one, because this is a really important issue, and we do in a way that we will not hurt people's livelihood.
So the early retirement incentive is designed to allow employees who don't have meet the age requirement to retire without penalty to retire without having that penalty. It does not award them additional pension benefits. It just avoids the penalty. The regime itself does require legislative approval, so it is in BIA 1, and so we will be working through the details and then moving to implement once the proper approvals have been achieved.
Thank you very much for that clarification. So just on providing support to people, we talk about the budget 2025, we talk about supports for especially those that are marginalized and seeking equality of opportunity. So I want to talk specifically about women, and people want to make sure that spending cuts are not hurting women specifically and diverse communities, or the government's GBA plus commitments. Can you explain how we're making sure that the review does not undermine equity and inclusion, and that it does indeed support those that do need it the most?
Thank
I'm
you for the
afraid
question.
there's only 8 seconds left for a response, but there will be one more intervention from the Liberal side, perhaps, if you wish, you can answer during that time. We're now going to go to Mr. Kelly, then we'll have Ms. Ramanado, then we'll go to Madame Gaudreau, and then we'll suspend. Mr. Kelly, go ahead for 5.
Okay, thank you. What will the early retirement incentive program cost?
I could. Can I ask my secretary to respond to this?
If you don't know the answer, we'll maybe get to that in the next hour. Why the need for the program if you are successfully reducing numbers through voluntary, through either voluntary attrition?
That's a voluntary attrition is early retirement incentive. There's a part of this exercise. So,
but you said that you have reduced the number already to 330,000. Sorry, to 346,000 as of September without this program. You're only going down another 16,000.
I think it's if my colleague could dive deep into that information, you will find more appropriate information that it says that the next 3 years we will achieve by 2027, 2028 that goal. And
you said you're going to go, if I may, sorry, you said the PBO said, according to the PBO summary that I read, the number at September 2025 was 346,000. The budget says that you're going to hit 330,000 by 2028-29. So I hope I'm not going too deep here. I have to go deeper to do the subtraction and say
but you
that's
said
16,000.
you already have done it, so why the need is?
No, you have gone from a height of 300 of I think it was 358,000. So you've kind of got halfway there without this program. You don't know what it's going to cost. I'm just wondering if you need the program at all.
That's a program we need, and that's why we're achieving those goals.
Okay, so you don't know what it will cost or if you need it, but you've also said that the reason that you can't give the PBO the information that they have asked for and are lawfully entitled to receive is because you are concerned about the individual workers in the public service. If you're going to get to your goal through voluntary people leaving voluntarily, there are no individuals that will be forcefully forced out, and furthermore, they're self-selecting. There is no privacy issue here. There is no individual that whose either privacy or their information would be out early. Why don't you just do what you're required to under the Parliament of Canada Act and give the PBO the information that they've asked for so that parliamentarians have access to the PBO's advice before we vote on these supplemental estimates?
We will respond to PBO as early as possible, and most probably in December first week.
You said on the 30th you would do so, and you didn't. How are we to take you at your word now?
I think I don't know what you're making it up when I said at 30th.
No, when you appeared at this committee on the 30th.
I am not sure.
Chair, I don't recall a date being committed to that.
Did I say that? It's. I don't think I recall that.
Sorry, I'll just interrupt and I'll stop the clock. You did state on October 30th to me that you would provide the information.
I did not give a date, Chair.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just stating that's when. But I'll turn back over to Mr. Kelly.
Okay, so so it is disappointing that we are not getting the information that has been asked for. Can you tell us at least anything about? Let's just pick one of them. For example, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans is one of the ones that seems to be heavy on operations, and one that the PBO wanted to know about. Can you not tell us anything about what type of reductions you're going to be looking for in that department?
As I said, the Early Retirement Incentive Program will help manage a reduction through attrition and voluntary departures. All employees will be treated with compassion and in accordance with their collective agreements, terms, and conditions of employment.
I didn't ask you how you were going to reduce the numbers. I asked you what types of operations might be affected, or what types of employees are you going to be looking at?
Every department was asked to put forward proposals. All ministers, they were asked to put forward proposals, and they have put forward proposal, and that's where we finalized those CER. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm trying to balance your time against cutting you off, Minister. Ms. Ramanatto, welcome. I'm not sure you've been with OGO before.
I don't think I have, so I'm
welcome.
delighted to be here. Thank you so much.
And your time is up. Well, no. Floor is yours for 5 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Chair. And through you, I'd like to thank the witnesses for being with us today. Minister, you've spoken about the extraordinary moment that Canada's facing on the generational investments that we need to get right. Some of my colleagues highlighted some of them earlier in the meeting. As we move forward, and we're making sure that the federal dollars we invest strengthen opportunities for Canadian workers, support our industries, and deliver benefits here at home. Can you elaborate a little bit on that and the importance of Buy in Canada?
Thank you. Thank you so much, my friend, for the important question. This time, this era, it is, and I think it's we are going through the time that no one has seen before. This is a global economic shift. There's a new economic realities, and what we see south of the border with the tariff situation. I think it's important for us to find the ways that to build Canada strong, find the way that that road leads to success for the future generation. And I think it's one of the policy we are implementing, that a Buy Canadian policy, which will move us from best effort to a clear obligations to buy Canadian. So federal dollars directly support Canadian workers and industries. We're moving from reliance to resilience. And Budget 2025 provides a clear investment to fully implement that policy across departments, agencies, and crown corporations, making it consistent and effective. We're also developing and harmonized procurement regulations to bring Canada's complex rules in one clear framework, which will simplify operations, reduce legal risk, and give suppliers a clarity they need to compete. And through new supports for small and medium-sized businesses, we're helping Canadians firm break into federal markets. So that is something we are focused on, and to assist as a Treasury Board President, I actually have launched Red Tape Review to reduce those duplicative regulation burdens so we can grow our economy faster and make it the strongest economy in the G7.
Okay. Further to that, I know that my colleague touched on the importance, the important new investments that we're doing across the government, including in national defense. As the parliamentary secretary for national defense, I have to say that I am quite pleased that we are making those historic investments, $81.8 billion over the next 5 years. Can you elaborate a little bit on how those investments, especially here at home, can help support the economy in these turbulent times, but also to help reinvigorate the defense industry here at Canada, that we have such incredible industry here, especially in Quebec in aerospace, and the importance of reinvigorating that industry and supporting it so that we can get the men and women in uniform what they need?
That is an amazing question, and I know you are. I think your family is in forces, and I think this is a time we need to build our forces stronger and sustainable, and that's why it was important to invest in our Canadian Armed Forces, to give them, to be able to provide them tools and training they need to secure our borders and to strengthen our capabilities. We're investing in naval ships repairs. We're investing in more capabilities and additional. We actually have raised salary for 20% salary and hiring more personnels. So this is a really important step towards making Canadian Armed Forces and industry sustainable, so we can help Europe, assist Europe in build and I think my point is up. But this is the way to build Canada strong, and that's what we're doing. Thank you.
We'll finish up with Madame Gaudreau, please.
Ben, pour votre gouverne, là,
Thank you, Chair. Maybe you do not know about this, but one of your colleagues has resigned, Mr. Gilbo. So it's not, things are not going well. Not only things are not going well, I was expecting answers. There's the slogan, transparency, spend less, invest more. I was expecting a demonstration of the fact that we were going to actually spend less and invest in things that we own in all transparency. Because we ask those questions, we need those answers. To vote as parliamentarians, to also provide the information to the taxpayers because it is their money. But here we are. Who has the obligation or duty to do this, with all due respect, Mr. Minister?
Is your question done? Just okay. Look, for me, I am here to serve Canadians and best of my abilities. And I believe in accountability, and our government believes in accountability. This is a new government, believes in accountability, transparency, and that's why we have put forward this budget 2025, which is the most transformational, generational budget, and it has all the information that you look into it. It has investments for future generation, to build Canada strong, to build communities strong, investments in Canadian armed forces. We're investing in major projects. We're investing in millions affordable housings. We're investing in infrastructure. We're focused on making it Canada as the superpower in energy sector. So which means more jobs, more opportunities, more.
J'essaie que ça soit égal.
Mr. Chair, I want my questions and answers to have equal time, and I only have a few seconds left. What I understand is that, and I thought we would be told something has to do X or Y, and what consultations were done? There were tons of consultations, and we made consultations ourselves. So, Mr. Chair, I'm very discouraged because I have the impression that all this is improvised, and I'm afraid. That's all I have to say.
Like to try and answer?
I can reinstate my commitment of accountability and transparency. This new government is committed to transparency and accountability, and we have the rules in place, and we follow those rules, and expect everyone to adhere with those rules.
Thank you very much. We will excuse the minister. Thanks for being with us. Colleagues, we're going to suspend for a couple moments as we clear out the minister and get set up for our next round. We're suspended. estimates. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Matthews, since the minister didn't know, can you at least tell this committee what lapsed funding is?
I can tell you across the government last fiscal was around 8% lower than usual or previous years. I should mention for defense, they have special authorities around carrying forward money because of the complexity of their projects. And, you know, they only pay when they get the bills from the suppliers. So this bleeds into one of your previous questions about the money in supplementary estimates B. There's a mix in there of money that was in the previous year that has come forward again as unspent, and that's for River-class destroyers as well as F-35. There's also some new money for drones and some base infrastructure and some training and things like that. So it's a combination in there.
Can you clarify if any of that counts towards the 1.1 billion in new spending that the minister was talking about?
The 1.1 is what is in these estimates, and as I just mentioned, it is a mix of things that you may have seen or would have seen in previous year's estimates that was not spent. So it comes into this year's, but it has to be re-voted on by Parliament, so that's why it's there, as well as new money.
Okay, so it's not fully new money. It's some new money, but it's also some of the...
Right, and when you're voting money for projects like national defense, they're so big that when you do see some slippage, it will roll over from one year to the next, and they are very difficult projects at times to forecast the cash flow on. So you err on the side of caution because you're not allowed to overspend. So it's natural for defense to see this kind of movement.
With regards to Canada Post, yeah, the $1 billion plus loan that was sent to them. I mean, there is a clause in the Canada Post Act that says repayment will be taken from annual revenue insofar as such revenue is sufficient. But, I mean, they posted another record loss. We're never getting that money back, are we?
So the loan is repayable until there's a decision taken that says it's not. It is repayable. And whether they will need additional funds, you know, they now have a labor agreement, as you mentioned, or was mentioned by the member, Mr. Chair. How they will rebound in terms of picking back up business that may have been lost during the rotating strikes, that will have a heavy influence in their cash flows going forward. So I'm sure they're keeping a close eye on that.
The section, I think it's section 31 of the Act also allows the Minister of Finance, which by extension through the Treasury Board, to send money to Canada Post. Is there an outstanding request for more funding, bailout funding, for lack of a better term, for Canada Post?
Mr. Chair, there's nothing on my office in terms of a request for additional funding, but the normal flow would be Canada Post through the Minister of PSPC over to Finance. Once the Minister of Finance, or if the Minister of Finance is on side with additional funding, it would then come to Treasury Board Secretariat at that time.
Are you able to write a clause in there that would essentially override that section 32 to make sure that the taxpayer is made whole as a condition within a set period of time, or does that section 32 prohibit you from being able to make sure that taxpayers are made whole?
Mr. Chair, the specifics on that one, I say in general, you can't override legislation with policy or agreements. I don't know this act in detail, but that would be a decision for the Minister of Finance to take when deciding what conditions to put on any funding for Canada Post.
Okay. Yeah, there's reports that Canada Post has said it's going to need another loan. I think $500 million. So I guess keep your eyes open for that going forward. When it comes to contracts, I mean, you said earlier that you don't review all the contracts before money gets sent out. But do you not find it alarming that you would get requests for large sums of money only to find out that legal hasn't read the entire contract, minister hasn't read the entire contract before it comes to you? Does that not alarm you as somebody who is as part of the process flow to either approve or not approve money before it goes out the door?
So I think there are people who have read the contract. I guarantee you there are lawyers who have read the contract inside the Government of Canada, et cetera. I don't know the timing, and I can't recall the timing of the Stellantis contract in terms of the current minister and the current deputy. I'm not even sure if they were present at the time that it was signed. The role for Treasury Board Secretariat is around approving the terms and conditions, and as long as a program respects the terms and conditions that were set out and approved by the government, then it is off to the responsible minister to and the department to fulfill those conditions.
Right, but we heard on Tuesday. Oh, thanks.
Mr. Gasparo?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for your service. Overall, how does the TPS ensure that our new spending not only meets immediate needs, but also positions Canada as a leader in attracting global investment? Like, what's some of the thought that's put into it?
So the flow, Mr. Chair, will be that when you see some new initiatives for investment approved in the budget, we're going to set aside tax measures, but new programs where there is actually dollars being spent. If they are new programs, they will come to Treasury Board Secretariat for approval. Those programs would include their objectives, how they plan to attain them, their performance measures, and a cash flow. And so Treasury Board Secretariat would be working with the responsible department to make sure that their performance measures and their approach meet the intent of the government.
So the Treasury Board Secretariat departmental results show that 91% of a sample of government programs included suitable measures for tracking performance, including and informing decision-making. I think that's pretty impressive. I'm glad to see the department has exceeded its target. What steps is TBS taking to close the gap overall, and how will departments be held accountable for meeting this target?
So the performance report for Treasury Board Secretariat in many cases is a roll-up of other departments' results, and that's just the role as a central agency. And the member has highlighted an area where the department's doing pretty well. There are others where there's clearly some work to do across the system. The way TBS would focus is where there is gaps and objectives not being met. We would work with the department around improvement plans, and they would then go forward and try and reach those. I will say there's a frustration in the system, including me, around performance reporting, because we have many programs in the government where there's just not sufficient data to report on whether the program is meeting its objectives. And that's one of the things that my colleagues and I with the minister would like to improve upon, is making sure you actually get the relevant data to measure the program, and then that you can truly go out and get it when it comes time to do an evaluation. So there's some homework for us to do on the results reporting.
Can we just drill down a little bit on that? How are you going to try to get the data you're looking for?
So the real place to do that is when a program comes in with its performance objectives and measures, to really push hard to say, how are you going to get this data? Can you get it? We have a very elaborate regime in many cases that has layers on it, but it turns out in some cases the data is not, they're not able to report on it the way they intended. And so you end up with an evaluation on program performance that is inconclusive. So when you get one of those evaluations, then that's a trigger to go back to the department and say, okay, rethink your performance metrics. And I'm probably making my friend Antoine squirm here, but he knows how I feel.
Would you like to add? Because we don't want you squirming too much.
No,
just a little.
I'm not squirming at all. Like I think, like as Bill mentioned, when we review, as Bill explained, like when we review proposal, before they come to Treasury Board, we set like ambitious goals. But it's always a challenge by setting ambitious goals to measure results, like to ensure that the departments like promotes like things that they can measure. And so we're we're pushing them hard to put like measures performance that can be measured.
How much time, Chair? Am I okay?
We've got a minute.
Okay. I know, I just want to drill down on one social policy matter. In my riding of Eglinton Lawrence, there are quite a few seniors who rely on the Canada Dental Care Plan. And just a few days ago, the Minister of Health announced that close to 6 million Canadians overall, or about 15% of the total population, use this plan. How will our new spending outlined, outline, I thought I was getting heckled there. How how will the new spending outline build and expand the Canada Dental Care Plan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there is funding in these supplementary estimates B for the dental plan, and that is largely because the take-up on that plan has been greater than initially forecast, and so their take-up's been terrific. Maybe there was a backlog of people waiting for these types of services, and that's why you've seen this initial wave, but there's additional funds in there for the plan to make sure that those who are eligible can receive the services that they're entitled to.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now going to go start at the top of the order again with Mrs. Block. Go ahead, Mrs. Block, for 5.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you, Mr. Matthews, and those sitting at the table with you, your responses to the questions that we as parliamentarians have for you. I'm looking at your website. It states that for the year 2024-25, the Government of Canada only met 53% of their department's mandated goals. What are the consequences, if any, when departments continue to fail or barely reach their goals? And this may follow up on Mr. Gasparo's questions. But when 53% of departments don't meet their, or when 47% of departments don't meet their mandated goals, what is the recourse of the Treasury Board Secretariat?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when we are establishing goals for departments, or when they are establishing them with our help, we do want stretch goals because you do want to aim high. That number is low. I'm not entirely sure exactly which figure the member is looking at, but I know 2 that are on TBS's departmental results report that are kind of jump off the page. High volume service, the system as a whole is down around 52%, and also the number of IT systems that we would view as being healthy. Again, we're in, I believe below 50%, and those are 2 numbers where you have to dig in and find out why. With the health of IT, it's a question of resourcing and prioritizing the spend in IT. On the high volume services, you can't really be generic about it. You have to look at each one and say, okay, what's going on there? Was their take up bigger than we expected? Were they unable to hire staff? What's the background on this? So it really is a case-by-case basis. To answer the question, what's the recourse? Treasury Board, with the Treasury Board Secretary, with the support or endorsement of Treasury Board, can put conditions around improvement on departments, or they could put additional reporting requirements on departments as a way to try and keep an eye on things. But it starts with, what's your plan to improve?
Ms. Block, before you continue, can you move your mic up a tiny bit? Bit more?
There we go.
Bit more?
A little more.
There we go. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So the Department of Citizenship and Immigration failed to meet 55.6% of their departmental targets in 2024-25. Now they're requesting an additional $624 million in funding through the supplementary estimates. Why is the Government of Canada rewarding departments with more funding when they fail to meet more than half of their departmental targets?
Thank you, Chair. And again, you have to really look into the detail of which targets are not being met and why. In some cases, the answer to meeting more of the targets is indeed resources. So it's not really an effective punishment to hold back resources if you've got a department that is not, in general, meeting its goals. So you have to really understand what is the reason. And I think more detailed questions about which ones are being met and which ones are not are probably more appropriate for the department in question. But I would just reiterate that the instinct to withhold resources for those departments who are not maybe doing as well as we would like may not be the right instinct.
Well, one could make a number of guesses as to what is going on in the Department of Citizenship and Immigration in not meeting their departmental targets. I'll move on. Regarding the operating expenditures for the interim federal health program, less than a week ago, the Standing Committee for Health called for the Auditor General to investigate this program amidst rising concerns over the ballooning costs. This year, an additional $598 million in funding will be added to the program through these estimates. So why is Treasury Board looking for approval to give a program $142 million more than last year when there is an audit pending for allegations of abuse within it?
Certainly. So the request has been made for an audit, but obviously until there is an audit done and there's conclusions, they're not proven. The recipients of the funding in this envelope are entitled to it. There's a backlog of cases, and so there's other measures being looked at to possibly better control the growth in this area as well. And I've not spoken to the Auditor General about a planned audit yet.
Thanks very much. We'll go back to Mrs. Romanato, please, for 5.
Thank you very much, Chair, and through you again to the witnesses. So this may sound like a bizarre question, but it's something I actually am quite interested in. For the expenditure cycle for the Government of Canada, what is the impact on it with respect to the changing of when we table our budget? So we made the decision to now do a fall budget so that it would allow provinces and territories, municipalities and so on to be able to do their planning as often, often they do their budgets in the spring, but they need to know what it is what's coming down the pike, really. So I'd like to know if it would be possible to elaborate a little bit on what that impact is in terms of the expenditure cycle for Treasury Board Secretary, but also what that would mean in terms of any additional changes that need to happen, if you'd like to elaborate a little.
Certainly. So the two main benefits for tabling in the fall are the one the member just mentioned, Mr. Chair, around giving provinces and territories more clarity about the federal government's plans while they develop their own budgets. And I've already spoken to a few provincial colleagues who are quite pleased with that. The second one is parliamentarians have often expressed frustration about lack of alignment between the budget when it's in the spring and the main estimates typically tabled around the same time that reflects nothing of the budget. Tabling the budget in the fall, as has been done this year and it will happen going forward, gives departments a chance to get budget measures into their main estimates, which Parliament will see in 2026 before April 1st, and allow better alignment there. Departments are going to have to work very hard to get their submissions for new funding into the main estimates, so that will be, excuse me, our job over the next few months with departments. And the other piece will be investments, but also reductions. So there's been some dialogue this morning or this afternoon around the CER and when will the details show up. The full details will be in the main estimates and the departmental plans that go with it when they are tabled in 2026. And the reductions we've been talking about, they don't actually take effect till April 1st. So that's where you will see the traditional parliamentary reporting with those details outside of PBO requests, et cetera, which has already been discussed.
So in that regard, with respect to those departmental results reports, would it then take us until an additional fiscal year before we're able to see those? Because if we're shifting that, I'm curious on when the reporting will be and the planning, just because we're kind of off cycle at the moment.
I actually think it works better, Mr. Chair. So the main estimates, the good companion piece is the departmental plans. So you get the high level, and the departmental plans will still go with those, and they should reflect the same things the main estimates reflect in terms of investments. And the departmental results reports, their companion piece is the public accounts of Canada, which they both happen in the fall, and they will continue to do so.
Now, in terms of some of the programs that you had talked about in terms of the CER, the Comprehensive Expenditure Review, when we do the review next year to see, how did we do in terms of, the cuts that were made or forecast and so on, is there a plan to do a sort of an updated training session for parliamentarians to understand a little bit more about the impact of these changes that we have, but also in terms of how to understand, because this is pretty new for parliamentarians in terms of the CER. Is there a plan in terms of providing parliamentarians a little bit more of an in-depth update on how this is working?
Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of any plan for tailored briefings to parliamentarians in terms of the plans. I will say the format of the reporting that departments use in their departmental plans and their results will be standard across the board, so parliamentarians will have an easier time to digest. Obviously, committees are free to dig into those, and we are certainly open to receiving any requests through the minister and his office around additional training that might be needed.
Okay. I'm good. Thank you.
Madame Gaudreau, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to learn more. How does it work, essentially? Who gives you the order to succeed in presenting an expenditure budget based on requirements? Does it come essentially from the Prime Minister's cabinet? I will turn to my colleague Antoine to add to my answers in a short while. Decisions that are taken by the government to invest need to be approved by the Treasury Board. After that, they are included in the expenditure budget. Maybe Antoine has something to add. My question is, I couldn't obtain any answers from the minister. So I'm wondering, where does it start? Where does it go? We are looking for answers that we are not receiving. Can you explain the process? The main priorities, of course, are established in the speech to the throne, and then they trickle down to budget decisions that go through the Department of Finance, the Minister of Finance, and the Minister, as was explained. After that, when an expenditure is announced in the budget, it goes to the Treasury Board for approval, and then it's only after approval by the Treasury Board that the expenditure can get into the main budget estimates. When I read the budget, and I would like to come back to investments, and this is something I like to discuss with people around me, particularly CPAs, who themselves do not understand how come all investments are in the same package. If we own a submarine or a plane or a building, the PBO said it was 4%. Well, I said those were not really investments. We are offering services.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. We have two certified professional accountants on this table, myself and Annie. When we talk about accounting standards, that is not going to change. Public accounts will continue showing expenditure as always, and the assets and so on. What the government has done is present the budget using a different definition for investments. The objective was to show all the government is doing to increase investments in Canada.
Investment, but there's also other measures the government can take to attract investment into Canada, and they were trying to, or they are presenting those all together as a capital investment plan. That will not change the public accounts of Canada and how we actually report results.
Donc, ce que je comprends, c'est que on a décidé.
So what I understand is that a decision was made. Well, the figures are good. We decided to play with the figures to present a certain picture. What are we expecting from the OAG if we are going to demystify real investments? Because I want to know what a tax credit is. And I understand, because these are economic spin-offs. When we talk to people, they say, what is an investment? It's clearly not what we are saying in the budget. Am I the one who is mistaken? Please help me.
Monsieur le
Mr. Chair, There are no standards in presenting the budget. Each person does something differently. Each government, the government of Canada decided to present its budget using a different format this time around, simply to underscore the investments being made. Some people do not like it, others like it. Well, we need to compare apples with apples. We can't compare what is happening in Quebec, because you own a hospital in Quebec, for example, and we're saying it's the same as in Quebec. No, it's not the same. And that's the choice we made with the figures we have, and the Auditor General will give us the results. Is that the situation? The Auditor General will continue audits of public accounts, but not the budget. Thank you, Chair.
And then Mr. Gasparo.
Thank you. So, Mr. Matthews, since we were chatting earlier, I have a question for you specifically on the contract again, on the Stellantis contract. On Tuesday, the Department of Industry told us that no single lawyer reviewed the entire Stellantis contract. They specifically said, to my amazement, that legal isn't even present during negotiations. So they explained that only a few lawyers would have seen select parts of the contract. So if there's no single lawyer who's reviewed a contract of $15 billion, would it be responsible for the Minister of the Treasury Board to sign off on the spending?
So again, Mr. Chair, in terms of how the agreement and the deal was reached, I wasn't there. I can't really comment on that. I'll go back and listen to that testimony with great interest. Again, we are dealing with the parameters. So it's Cabinet makes decisions that establishes the parameters of a program or an initiative or a deal. And if the department's proposal to Treasury Board respects those parameters and respects Treasury Board policies, then the responsible minister is given the authority to go ahead.
Okay, so would you expect that lawyers would have combed through that humongous $15 billion contract with a fine-tooth comb to protect Canadian taxpayers before it came to you?
I would expect that the responsible departmental officials in Justice and ISED and maybe others would have reviewed all relevant material, and I will go back and listen to that testimony with interest.
Okay, so earlier Minister Ali said that there's mechanisms to deal with people violating TBS guidelines. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So Treasury Board policies and Treasury Board directives are mandatory, and there's a way for a department to seek an exemption if warranted, and Treasury Board can grant exemptions, or I can grant some. Where you've got departments who are not respecting Treasury Board policy, there are things Treasury Board can do. They could remove delegation for contracting authority or for HR authorities, etc. So it effectively would be, the most common one would be additional reporting, or an improvement plan. If it's too severe, then you would actually see pulling back of contracting authority.
Okay, so would you consider not having at least one lawyer look through the entire contract? Like I say, I was absolutely stunned when they said they don't have legal during negotiations. And then on top of it to say, well, no one single lawyer actually sat through the entire, they were parsed out pieces of the contract. Like, would that have broken the rules? That seems to me like very unusual for a $15 billion contract.
So I can't speak to what happened in this case. The normal case when I was in line departments, when you're reviewing a major agreement or deal, is you would get legal advice as part of that, and they would sign off on this. I cannot speak to the detailed process that the department followed.
So you are saying it would be the norm that Treasury Board would expect that there would be proper lawyer oversight before it comes to you for signing?
There would, before a department reaches a deal, there would be legal risk analysis and a sign-off of some sort. You're not going to find that in a Treasury Board policy. That's just my own expectation, and it's my experience as well.
And you know what? Honestly, I would expect that as just a regular Canadian taxpayer that you would have proper legal oversight. So it just kind of blew my mind when they mentioned that.
Well, as I said, Mr. Chair, I will go back and read that testimony. So I'm curious.
Yeah. So that was Stephanie Tanton that said that. She was very clear at the Tuesday meeting. So. the job of the Treasury Board, you're there to ensure that things like there's provisions to protect the Canadian jobs in the agreement. Is that correct?
Again, it would be the parameters of if there's a program involved, which is a series of agreements, there would be parameters in the program that they would need to respect. My recollection of the Stellantis is that it's not a particular program, it's a one-off agreement. The parameters of that would have been approved by, not by, like the broad parameters, not approved by Treasury Board, they would have been negotiated by the department.
So you would have nothing to do of ensuring that there were job guarantees in that. Whose job would it be to ensure there were job guarantees in order for that? Because I know, like from what I understand, the Treasury Board is this that has to make sure spending is justified, risks are understood, the department has done its homework, and taxpayers are getting what they pay for. So whose job is it to make sure there are job guarantees or clawbacks if things don't happen, or like in the case of Stellantis, they leave?
So
very brief answer, please.
Sure, certainly, Mr. Chair. The department would be responsible for making sure that they had enough protection to respect the government's decision in terms of whatever guarantees were established when it was approved.
Ms. Rochefort, please.
We thank you very much, Mr. Chair. But I was pleased to read in the departmental results that the Secretariat, the Treasury Board Secretariat, had identified $9.6 million in spending reductions in 2024-2025. And I think it was listed that you had, there was reductions in operations, professional services, transfer payments, travel, and so on. But I was just wondering in terms of how that affected your obligations to deliver on priorities or any significant projects that you might have had.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will turn to my Chief Financial Officer in a moment to just elaborate for a bit. But TBS is a very human-centric organization, so we are very, very heavy on people. We are not delivering programs directly to Canadians. So where we typically look for savings is just making sure we are looking at the areas of highest risk and consolidating where we can in terms of functions and taking a look at some things that maybe we used to do in the past that we no longer are value added. I don't know if you wish to add anything, Annie?
Yes, thank you for the question. There is I don't have the reference to the 9 million savings reduction, but I know there's a 15 million reduction in our spending because there was a transfer of the Canadian Digital Service to Employment program was transferred to the Employment and Social Development Canada. So there's a reduction in our spending due to a transfer of program to another department.
Well, just on that note, I'm equally interested in knowing how AI is improving the services of the Treasury Board.
AI is one of the interesting pieces that we are looking at throughout government, and there's, every department is doing some mini experimentation with artificial intelligence. At TBS, it's very helpful for us in terms of reviewing and processing. We have analysts experimenting with using it to edit memos, etc. I think it's too early to say, point to me exactly what the productivity gains have been. If you talk to colleagues in the private sector, they would tell you they're experiencing the exact same thing. We're all experimenting and all trying to figure out where the true production or productivity savings are, and so more to come on that in the future, I think.
Just to come back to briefly to a comment that was made by the minister, I'd like to understand just how involved you are, for example, in the purchase of fighter jets.
So it's national defence, Public Service Procurement Canada, and the new Defence Investment Agency, which is relatively new, who would be involved in that, along with partners from the Department of Industry, ISED. Treasury Board would have a role in terms of approvals for contracts, project authorities, getting regular status updates. So this project has been underway for a while. Where the department might be seeking additional money or a change in plans, they may have to come to Treasury Board, but Defence has pretty broad authorities with PSPC to manage on a day-to-day basis.
Very good. And maybe just a final comment on the environmental footprint. Did you see through your departmental results, are there any comments on the reduction in the government's environmental footprint?
So Treasury Board Secretariat, Mr. Chair, has something called the Greening Government program or organization. It's a small group that is very much focused on reducing emissions from government operations, so inside government. The two to highlight are we are now at 83% of our light-duty vehicles are now green, so that's great. And then if you look at emissions from government buildings, comparing 2025 to previous years, we're down 42%, I believe, over the last 20 years or so, so making good progress. So we're on track. The eventual goal there is net zero, obviously, so still a ways to go.
My colleague here always says, thank you for your service, but thank you for those results. So that's very impressive. So good work. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll go to Mrs. Block for 5, and then Madame Gaudreau.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Matthews, according to the TPS website, GC Infobase, in 2024-25, Public Safety Canada set a total of 28 goals, and 14 of them are sitting at 0%. This is a department where 98% of the executives received bonuses in 23-24 when they met only 35.7% of their goals. The department is requesting an additional $43 million in supplementary spending in these estimates. And I guess my question for you is, given the Treasury Board sets the policy framework for how bonuses are awarded, what do you have to say when 98% of executives receive bonuses within a department when they haven't even met half of their stated goals?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, you would have to look at which goals are not being met and why. So if there are goals that are not being met because the required approvals weren't taken, et cetera, or something was delayed, you have to really dig in and determine what the cause is. In terms of those results and how we are monitoring at TBS, we are launching a new risk and compliance framework that will help us better assess how departments are doing in terms of where they're carrying risk, and some of those risks could be around delivery. In terms of Treasury Board Secretariat involvement in the awarding of performance pay to executives, that is up to the department's deputy head to make those determinations in terms of whether their executives are meeting what was asked of them or not. And so we don't have line of sight into those decisions. That is a deputy head decision.
But the Treasury Board is responsible for setting the policy framework. When you see incidents like this, where a department is not meeting even half of the goals they set, regardless of what the excuses or reasons may be, has the Treasury Board had a conversation in regards to reforming how bonuses are rewarded?
So regarding performance pay and linked to departments achieving their published targets or results, I have not had any of those conversations. I can tell you, in terms of the approach we take at TBS for our own employees, we are looking at whether the executives met the expectations in their own performance agreement. Some are tied to delivering on certain programs, and some are not. Some are more corporate related. So you really have to understand why the targets are not being met, and then the link to the executives before passing any judgment, I think, on whether there's a bigger problem.
Thank you very much, Chair. That is all that I have for today.
Thanks. Madame Gaudreau.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Je vais juste compléter.
Thank you, Chair. Let's talk about the contracts again. It's here that we have to look into contracts. You experienced that nightmare, Mr. Chair, and I'm really concerned. A while ago, I put the question to the minister. There's a salary increase, and there's a collective agreement, and 16,000 positions will be cut by attrition, and so on and so forth. Where is it stated here that contracts will be reduced and that work will be provided taking into account the competency levels of the public servants that will remain? Where do we find that information? Because I'm really concerned, because it looks like this is a fiasco. It's in the budget that the government stated that there's a plan to reduce expenditure when it comes to contracts by 20%. But that does not concern all services. We use contracts to fill some positions in services like construction and so on. So there's a difference.
Work on that. There's some really good disclosure around government spending on contracts and what it's for in the public accounts. In terms of the balance between the public service and contracting and reductions, number one, all public servants are created equal. So where we have cases where we can do the work with public servants rather than with contractors, we should be doing with public servants every single time. But there are skill sets we do not have in the public service that we need outside help, construction, etc., and that's fine as well. So I think you'll see in departments' plans, main estimates, etc., and their departmental plans where they plan to spend money and where the reductions will be by skill set. The one that's worth highlighting is we did put in a special regime for experts in the digital domain that basically, through our Chief Information Officer, departments are forced to kind of look at the digital talent we have inside the government before they go outside. So that's one specific thing we've done, but where we can do the work with public servants, that will obviously be the priority.
Monsieur le Président, on aura une vigie à faire, puis j'ai l'impression...
Mr. Chair, I don't want to experience another nightmare because when we talk about digital, I get concerned once again. Thank you. I think I'll stop there. I'm sure you yourselves have difficulty going to sleep.
Madame Gaudreau, I think we all wish to avoid another digital nightmare. Colleagues, if you don't mind, I just have a couple of quick questions for you, Mr. Matthews, and a couple of maybe just for an answer and a couple maybe take away with you. I'm glad Mrs. Block brought up the issue about the bonuses and the lack of, I guess, alignment with what's achieved. And I'm glad it's brought up because I've brought it up in public accounts, probably many different ministers and many different department heads, and the excuse is always, or the answer is always, well, we follow Treasury Board guidelines. And I'm sure I can, if you wish, I can go through all the blues from the many times we brought it up, but they always blame Treasury Board. Yes, we failed massively, but we're only following Treasury Board guidelines. So I think the onus seems to be placed on the guidelines. You mentioned about not passing judgment. I think when 98% of executives and management are getting bonuses when results are failing, I think it was, according to GC Infobase, 47% of the results were not achieved. Previous year was, from memory, close to 50. Previous year, 53%. So we have this massive failure, and departments are always saying, well, we're just following the rules. So I'll put that back with you. I just want to follow up. I'm glad you talked about departmental plans. I noticed, and when you look at the departmental results, fully 19% of last year's departmental results didn't have or had no results available. And then, and I brought this up, and I know you're probably laughing inside because we bring this up every year for the last several years, or to be achieved in the future. And of course, the estimates are based on a one-year achievement. I'm hoping that you will actually stop that procedure or practice in the departments where they're actually presenting departmental plans to Parliament, but without actual goals attached. So I do appreciate that. The stretch goals, I wonder if you could get back to us. I know you mentioned, okay, departments are mission because of stretch goals. We actually go through and look, and a fair amount of where they've missed the results, they've actually dropped less than last year. And if you look at the departmental plans, I'd be happily bet money more than 50% of the goals for next year are actually below what they actually achieved the previous year. So I don't think it's because they have stretch goals when most of them are actually showing lower, their goals are to actually achieve less than they have previous years and the previous year before that. So I'll just leave that with you. I do have a quick question. I want to follow up with Mr. Kelly, who's left the room, about the PBO and the CER. like the PBO wrote to the 5 departments asking for the information. He didn't write to Treasury Board. He wrote to the 5 ministers. But the Comptroller General responded, like, who directed her not to provide the information to the PBO? And I am going to see, like, was October 30th we asked the minister, and he said yes. I know October 31st, the cabinet was briefed by the Comptroller General and others on the CER, but still not released. Some, like, who would have directed her to refuse to hand over the data to the PBO that's required under the Parliament of Canada Act?
So, a couple of points in there, Mr. Chair. One, the decision for the Comptroller General to write to the PBO and say, you know, we're unable to respond right now. It was not a no, it was we can't respond within this deadline. And there was no consultation on the deadline. It was just, and so that decision was taken between myself, the Comptroller General, and colleagues at the Department of Finance. And it was just felt, because all 5 were in the same boat, that just one response would be a useful thing to say.
Okay, October 31st, when the Comptroller General briefed the Cabinet Committee on this, you're saying she briefed him with incomplete numbers?
The Comptroller General would not have briefed Cabinet Committee on.
So you're saying Comptroller General did not brief anyone on this?
On the CER?
Yes.
The Comptroller General would not have been briefing on the CER. No, she will now be monitoring results. But the decision was around, we know all 5 aren't in a position to respond, so we just thought one response is better. This was not a no, we will not respond. It's we can't respond in this timeline. So the 5 departments in question are all working to respond as quickly as they can, and those responses to the PBO, to the request, will come from the departments on behalf of their minister, not from TBS.
Okay. So I appreciate that. So the decision made by yourself and finance, but not by the departments themselves. When the PBO wrote to the departments, no offense, not to you, not to finance, but to the departments.
That's fair, Mr. Chair. There was dialogue between Treasury Board Secretariat and departments about this. It was not just written out of the blue without consulting departments. They were not in a position to respond.
Okay. I think we will agree to disagree, and we hope that we will see the document or the information very soon. I do echo Mr. Kelly's comments. It's bizarre to ask us to vote on a budget on the cuts when the cuts aren't, the information is not shared with us, and then to sit and say, well, we have to inform others what the cuts will be after Parliament, uninformed. That's what the cuts. But I appreciate your feedback. I'm glad you were able to join us today. Mr. Matthews has been with us so much. I think he's reached OGO Super Elite status, so you get a complimentary upgrade on your next visit with us. Anyways, thanks very much for being with us. Colleagues, I have a couple of quick announcements just to update everyone. December 2nd, we had set aside for our meeting with Mr. Guzman and Secretary Fuhr. Unfortunately, they have stated it was for a 2-hour meeting. They have stated they will not honor our motion, and they are refusing to meet separately. They will only appear together for 1 hour. I'm not asking for a decision or anything from the committee yet, but we'll bring it up at the next meeting. We've given them several alternatives, but they will not appear separately and will only appear for 1 hour. You saw the note, December 11th is Canada Post now. We do apologize. I think we said repeatedly it's the 4th, but it is December 11th, so I appreciate everyone's patience with that. December 4th, we will have in person for 1 hour the representative from Stellantis. The second hour we had made available, we had invited the Minister for PSPC. We made several dates available, and unfortunately the Minister will not make himself available to defend his estimates. December 4th, we're looking at the second hour being PSPC officials. So I'll leave that with everyone, and we can take up the issue of the motion calling for 2 hours, separate hours for Mr. Guzman and the Minister, and then how we wish to follow up with the Minister for PSPC at our next meeting. Again, witnesses, thanks for being with us today. We appreciate the information and the feedback you provided. Colleagues, thanks very much for the patience as we play around with our schedule. We are adjourned.